or in the same ways that they used to. So we need to be cognizant of that, and I want to task our membership committee and our staff to really hone in on that. Second is to monitor conditions impacting upcoming events, and if circumstances dictate, empower our staff to strategically withdraw us from our contractual obligations for EIJ and SDX events with little to no financial penalty. We have a partnership, obviously, with EIJ, with RTDNA, so we want to move in concert with them. We have contractual obligations for all of our events that we need to keep in mind. But, you know, given if the circumstances dictate that we can't hold those events, we need to be thinking about what will take to make that work, and we're gonna do that within the next few months. I'm sure that'll keep being a conversation even in the next couple of weeks. Request staff in the awards committee to devise a way to effectively honor our award winners. Should we not have an SDX awards event, then how do we make sure that those winners are truly recognized? And I want our staff and volunteers who know that area well to help contribute to that. ED and the board executive committee, or I should say officers, outline the procedures for 2020 elections and House of Delegates proceedings for the board to fully consider. We got to think about how we conduct our business if we can't have an EIJ in-person meeting. We want to continue current COVID-19 responses, including website resources, which we've done, planning more webinars, which we are attempting and trying to rebuild some muscle there, as I'd say, because we haven't done them in a while, at least to the extent we're doing them today. Twitter chats and other formats, as well as an upcoming, our annual Day of Giving, which we like to reframe as a day of giving back, in which we're going to request that people who have means and want to donate to the organization do so that we can then provide grants to journalists in need immediately and almost just kind of pass through to those folks so that they can get supported at this time when there's so much turbulence in the journalism world. And then request money from the SPJ Foundation to build capacity to strengthen online training and education. We had a meeting with the SPJ Foundation this morning and had great conversations around that, and that continues. And as Patty referenced, we'll have more for them and just more discussions with them as well. Part of our 3-month action plan ought to be to provide extra chapter support in terms of operational needs. We want to help the chapters stay solvent, stay strong, and stay busy as much as they want to. We've already provided a Zoom opportunity, Zoom license for chapters. We want to continue to think about things like that can help our chapters at this time. We want to empower staff, and I've named a couple of the folks who directly work with these programs, but also maybe a small task force of those who are who know these programs well, to make sure our Google and Facebook trainings, which are a big part of what we do, stay consistent through the course of this. Would love to recruit 2 new association management clients to help us with our revenue. And we want to, part of this plan would be to task me as the executive director, not alone, but sort of to spearhead the effort alongside others who would inform certain particular areas to bring a thorough 3 to 5 year strategic plan, or at least some semblance of ideas to the board in June to look at as a way to react to a plan versus having to take all the time to build it from scratch. So that's something that we can talk about how we try to manage through that. And then lastly, things we'll continue doing is all these things. If we can get the board's approval, we'll implement a new database system. We'll continue our membership communication. Our website will continue to be updated. We need to develop a 2021 calendar year budget, so that will come quickly, as well as think about EIJs into the future, including 2022, where we don't yet have a location determined. And then we currently do Google and Facebook trainings, and we'll continue to do those as they've been constituted. So
thank you very much, John. Open it to board feedback or questions. Board members, do we have questions for John?
I thought it was very clear and concise. Thank you.
So we very much appreciate John taking the lead and getting our ducks in a row. There's a lot on his plate when he came to the office, and there is more now because of the current environment. And so trying to prioritize what tasks need doing every day, every week is a tall order. John, are we discussing future EIJ locations on the next agenda item? on 10. I don't know where in the agenda you were going to talk about future EIJs.
Yes, we can talk about it at that point. Let me pull open.
Okay.
If you want to move to that, we can.
Yeah, I want to take care of one item first. Your slide deck referenced moving forward on our database vote. We just, in our executive session, talked about the financials related to that very big decision. And I would entertain a motion from a member of the board on what we would like to do in the wake of that discussion.
I'll make the motion to accept the contract as outlined.
Very good. Are we in a position, John, to disclose the vendor, or is that a
No, I think so. The vendor is Impexium. It is a vendor that many other or a few other journalism organizations use, as well as multiple other associations. And if the board approves this here, I think we've got a great partner to work with in building a really robust database.
So Mike Riley has just moved that we move forward with a contract with Impexium. Do I have a second on that?
Lauren, second.
Lauren Bartlett is seconding. And do we have additional board discussion on that motion?
Yvette Walker, just that I think that it's a good idea going forward, and also the fact that I think that we and people involved believe that this is a good solution for us, and I'm confident with that.
So in executive session, we did ask that John and the staff work up a news release to let our members know that we have reached this point. They will be excited, I think, those of you who manage chapter affairs. I hope this is good news for you. But in terms of the timeline, I do think, John, that we should just quickly inform folks, when would this actually be in use?
Yeah, so we've already gotten, should the contract be approved, we've already gotten it cleared from our attorneys, and we'll be able to sign on Monday. And then they tell me 4 to 6 weeks implementation. I've told them I want it as quickly as possible, and they're excited to do it. So I'm hoping by September we have a new database.
Just to be clear, 4 to 6 months, right?
4 to 6 months.
6 months of
It'd be
implementation.
awesome, 4 to 6 weeks. but-
Yeah,
Okay, let's not overpromise.
that's right. Thank you for correcting that.
Very good. So just the short history, you know, we had a different vendor for a long number of years. And then in the last year and a half, 2 years, we had a vendor that did not turn out to be the right choice, according to all involved. And we are separating from that vendor and moving to Impexium as soon as we have a contract. Do we have further comment or conversation from board members? Lauren.
I just wanted to bring up one point related to the transition. I know we use the membership database when we're pulling the list of members for voting purposes for elections. So just wanted, John, for you to keep that in mind to make sure whatever the time frame is, you know, you can get an accurate member list over to the company that's running the election.
Good point. All right. Are we ready for a vote, board? All those in favor of Mike Riley's resolution, seconded by Lauren, please say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Any abstentions? The motion carries, and we are moving to Impexium. Thank you, John, for all the work on that. Next on the agenda is moving to EIJ 2020. This is a big conversation, and I'll start us off by saying, as all of you know, we start planning for the next year's big show pretty much when the old one is done. And so planning began in the fall for our conference in Washington, D.C., September 10 through 12. We've reached a point in the programming planning that we had pretty much we have a schedule of events that we'd like to stage. We have producers, we have names of guests, we have some very solid ideas on super session, and so on and so forth. But of course, it's a new reality now, and so we have some decisions to make. And we haven't made those decisions yet, but they are looming in the very near future. So with that, I'm going to let John take over to outline the considerations as we think about whether we can go forward and stage EIJ 2020 in person in Washington, D.C.
So as I kind of referenced as well in the 3-month action plan. So, you know, these things are moving quickly. You all observe as well that things are changing daily as far as events cancellations or reschedulings or postponements. Right now, it appears that events that are happening in July are the ones you're seeing most get canceled, in the association world anyway, canceled or postponed or moved virtually. And so we're still in that point where, you know, as an early September event, we're still in a watch and wait attitude. We do have a contractual obligation to our hotel property, of course, that we need to consider, as well as we do not have insurance to cover cancellations for an event of this nature, an epidemic. So for those reasons, we need to also move smartly as far as thinking through how we approach this. Our partners at RTDNA, we've been in touch with them. We want to give it a couple more weeks, give it a few weeks to take a look and see what the landscape provides, and then we'll work in concert with them to consider what our way forward is. We know it'll be difficult for people to even travel if an event could happen. We know there's a lot of factors at play, but all I can really report at this point is that we're just going to keep studying the issue and trying our best to make the right decision for SPJ.
So that's where things stand right now. There are financial considerations at play here if we would cancel or postpone or do something else, right? Somehow try to schedule a conference that's not held in person but held virtually. And we, as soon as there is a decision, we will most definitely let membership know so everybody can move forward with their plans. So that's about as much as we can say. And Joel, if you don't mind, we're going to try to hold questions to the end just because we have a whole lot to talk about here, but we will definitely take any of your questions when we get to public comment.
Patty, if I could just
Yes.
say one thing really briefly.
Sure.
I just wanted to thank all of the RCs and Jane for compiling all of their feedback. In a meeting last weekend, Jane and I talked, and Matt had asked that the RCs get input from the members in their regions. And so Jane compiled that, and that has been shared with the board in executive session. So thank you, everybody. And it's definitely information that the board is looking at and will continue to look at as we continue to assess the situation.
Absolutely. And I think that's a message you can take back to all of your chapters and all of your members, that we do want your input on this as we work through the myriad of decisions that have to be made. And with, yeah, go ahead, Matt Hall.
I know you said no questions to the end, but I don't want this to get lost.
No,
in the chat.
you're a board
Well,
member, Matt, so you
I
can
just
jump in at any time.
Awesome. I just want to say, Colin dropped a question in the chat, which will probably be lost by the time we get to it.
Okay.
And that question was, does the venue contract have any kind of marks along the way towards September that would allow us to recoup more or less, you know, that would change how much we're on the hook for? I think the answer is no. I just want to.
Yeah, the answer, we've got a favorable contract, Colin, and others in a way that we could cancel up to the day before, and it's the same penalty no matter what. So we don't have to rush to a decision for that reason.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Matt. Let's go then to the next item on the agenda, which is a membership report from John. We're on number 11, folks.
Yeah, and sorry, I didn't, so you had asked about EIJ 2022.
I'm sorry, yes.
There was a reason, we have a list that our meetings director compiled for me of potential sites, but the reason I didn't forward it to the board was because I felt like we need to see this through and this period of decision on EIJ 20 before we would obligate ourselves to anything for the future. At this point, it's something we could bring up, you know, in a matter of a month or two as well. So that's part of the reason. We do have a list of cities that want us, West Coast, Middle, South, sort of all over Chicago, other places, and with hotel rates attached to that. I just have not compiled that for you guys yet, in a sense. Plus, part of that is also traveling to go do site visits, and we can't do that right now as it is. So.
Legit, right. So folks know we are scheduled for New Orleans after this year. So far as we know, that's where we're going, but you know, lots of decisions to be made. But typically this is the meeting where we talk about 2 years out, 3 years out, but understand the reasoning there clearly, John. Now is not a time when we can really move forward on any firm decisions. So
And I think the June meeting might be a time to be a little more laser focused on that, to be honest. So.
yeah, sounds good. Sounds good. All right. I'm sorry, I jumped over that. And then let's go on to number 11, membership.
Okay, so in your files, board in the board packet, we are going to look at a few things here. Caroline Escobar, as I said, our membership manager, is on the call to help answer questions as you may have them. The first couple of documents, 11A and B, refer to the, or I'm sorry, 11, let me pull them up to make sure I'm, so 11A sort of is a high level overview of 3 groups seeking to be chartered. And those are Colorado State University Pueblo, Northeastern Illinois, and Sam Houston State. So we need to take action on that. As well as connected to that is the action around chapters that should be inactivated. And they are listed in your documentation on 11C, 2019-20 chapter action list. So this is my first board meeting dealing with this, but I imagine that the board would take a look at this list and then vote in one vote to accept the list or not. But it looks like in total, we are going to have 20 chapters on that list to be inactivated. Most of them, in fact, it might be all of them, are campus chapters. And this comes from after extensive outreach to these organizations, these chapters, as well as the regional coordinators to offer support. And these chapters have not submitted annual reports and just simply have not been heard from and don't have current contact information. So we have no reason to believe that these chapters are even active, so at all. So that's the reason they're on this list. So maybe we stop there with that portion of our decision-making, Patty, and I'll answer any questions. And Caroline was the one who sort of led that process, so she can also address that if needed.
Can you give me a reminder on the list of chapters to consider deactivating? I'm not finding that.
Yeah, so in the board packet of materials, it is document 11C, 2019-20 chapter action list.
Other board members, are you finding that? I'm not seeing
Yeah,
it.
it's in there.
Yes, it's in there.
It's in there.
11C.
Correct.
Patty, it was added just today. I didn't receive that document until today. So
Okay.
I had to rename those documents. So that may be the issue, but it should be in there now as
I just want to
11C.
refresh your Dropbox.
Yeah. I think that's the issue. Thank you.
Yeah, I hadn't previously seen it either.
Yeah. All right. As I am scanning that, do we have questions, comments from board members? Go ahead, Lauren, go ahead.
I strongly endorse chartering the proposed new chapters. However, I would like to see us, sorry, thanks, John. I would like to see us put a pause on deactivating any chapters until at least our next meeting. I know we've gone through the normal steps that we usually
No,
do.
we can just do that.
But I also know we are talking about doing some things a little bit differently, including the online education that we're looking to move forward with. And I would just like to see us make one more effort with each of them, just to be absolutely sure there's no living, breathing person who has any interest in helping keep that chapter alive. So I'd like to table that till our next meeting and move to vote to approve the new chapters that are in 11A.
Can we hear from Caroline on how much of that has already been done? Caroline on the call?
And the other reason I'm bringing it up
Try to
also,
get in touch with
Patty,
her.
is that I've spoken with the RCs about this issue, and I know the desire is really, if there's any chance at all, just to be able to try to give it one more try. So I don't see any harm in a delay for a couple of months.
Well, June, did we have Caroline on the call, John, or not?
He's getting on. It was my fault for not notifying her. We were out of executive session.
That's all right. That's all right. Was that a motion, Lauren?
Yes. So
Okay. Do we have a second on the motion?
Second, Riley.
Second from Mike Riley to take a pause on the deactivation of the additional campus chapters. And I would like to hear from Caroline.
and to charter the ones in 11A.
Yes, to go forward with the ones that were, okay. All right.
Maybe I recommend that we could discuss and vote on the first of chartering the ones, the 3, and then
Sure.
by the time.
And then, yeah,
we
that
can
sounds
discuss
good.
them.
Is that okay with you, Lauren, that we separate that out?
Yes.
Very good. So we are now just voting to activate the 3 campus chapters as listed. Motion from Lauren, seconded by Mike Riley. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any objections? Any abstentions? All right, so welcome to 3 new chapters. That's always good news. Let's focus on the good news. And then we'll come back when Caroline's on. We'll come back to that.
I think she just got in. So I'll just say, Caroline, my apologies for not getting you on here sooner. But the board just voted in the 3 chapters we recommended be activated, and now we're discussing the inactivation list, and just wanted your perspective on how much outreach we've done to these groups to this point. Oh, I think you're muted, Caroline. There we go. Hi. Sorry again.
Hi, sorry. I missed I was still logging into my audio, so I missed what you said. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so the board approved the 3 chapters to activate, and then we're discussing tabling the other ones to a future meeting to try one more outreach to the deactivated or inactive list. And
Okay.
Patty wanted to hear from you about how much outreach we've done thus far.
Yeah, absolutely. So the outreach started, it was a conversation that actually started at EIJ last year. And I was talking with Andy Schatz about it, and I had interest in doing a pretty extensive chapter audit. I felt like it was time to really dig in and see realistically what chapters are active, where have maybe some fallen through the cracks over the past few years. So I spent about a month putting together all of the data and going through a ton of old files and stuff. And that's how I came up with about 56 originally. And out of those 56 chapters, more than half of that had not submitted annual reports in a number of years. And so I just kind of started digging. And with that, by October, I had managed to put together a spreadsheet and sort of like an action item for the regional coordinators to see if they could help me in some outreach, trying to get a hold of anybody they could with these chapters. A lot of the information that we had at HQ was outdated because of the length of time that it had been since we had heard from them. So I only had like the most recent information provided, and some of it was dating back to like 2013. So that started October 22nd, and we gave them all the way through the end of the year. And then in January, I followed up again, and we had managed to condense the list a little bit. And from there, I just started to individually follow up with as I could, looking on websites, trying to figure out who was the current person in the whatever department they were in. I think I sent the timeline over to John earlier. So then I sent a letter, an email to all of these chapters, letting them know, hey, here's what's happening. I would love to hear from you. I need these things from you, a list of elected officers, your most recent annual report, any information, what have you been doing, your bylaws, a copy of your bylaws, and then let's get you back to active. Like, let's make sure that we're all on the same page. And through that process, with all of that follow-up, we managed to condense that list from 56 down to just 20. And these 20 chapters are all university chapters, are all student chapters. And I just don't have any information from them. They've not responded to any of the follow-up. They've not responded to, if the RCs reached out, there was no response from them. And I just don't have any current information. Mail's been returned that we try to send to them. So out of the 56, we managed to get it down to 20. So I thought that was pretty good. And I'm absolutely happy to table that until, if we want to continue to try to work on it. But this is a project we've been working on since about October.
Right, that's very helpful. Right, so between now and June, I would say we're not going to have any additional progress on that because campuses are pretty much 100% remote at this time, and tracking down former advisors or administrators who can answer that question would be a fool's errand, and nobody is going to be committing to restarting an SPJ chapter on their campus at this moment in time, right? That's just not likely. So you know, we could wait until June, our next meeting. Before I see your hand, Lauren, before we go forward, if we would deactivate and then let's say Florida Atlantic University decides it wants to come back, is that a big, is that a big impediment? Is it easy to come back once you're deactivated?
Yes, the process, I make it as simple as I absolutely can, especially under the circumstances that we're all living under now. I try to simplify the process as much as possible. I just need a list of officers. So, you know, get your chapter together, hold an election. Let's get your officers on file with HQ so that we know that we're sending communications to good people. Let me know who your advisors are so that I can connect with them. Update your bylaws. And let's go. So it really is just a matter of 1, 2, 3, and then they're good to go. And like I said, out of the 56 I started with and got down to 20, all of those other chapters had managed to turn that around in no time. The advisors are, you know, if you can catch a good advisor, they're really responsive. So it's very easy process to get them back to good standing.
Thank you. Lauren has a question.
Comment and actually a question for any of the RCs who are part of the meeting. Comment being, a lot of times if the advisor is no longer there, it's really hard to follow up and contact if you don't reach out to the dean or associate dean. Mike Riley suggested in chat that we do that with every single one of these chapters, because while the process that Caroline, that you outlined sounds very simple, if whoever is still at the university isn't familiar with it, it could be problematic. So I would like to see the dean at each of these universities, you know, for there to be contact with the dean or associate dean at each of these universities. I don't think it causes any harm. I know that there are other people here who have much more recent experience with campus chapters than I do, because it's been many years since I was president of mine. And there's some RCs who are part of this meeting who might also be able, or chapter advisors who might be able to weigh in. But I think that is worth that extra call, because we don't want to deactivate chapters if we can avoid it.
All right, so the motion on the table is to table this portion of the report until June and ask Carolyn in the office to make an attempt at the dean level, the associate dean level. I think also probably sharing this list more widely with the board and the RC community. Maybe we would come up with some new names, like, hey, try that guy, not that guy kind of thing. So that's all right. That being the case, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any objections? Abstentions? All right, you'll see this back on your agenda for June of this year. Thank you very much, Caroline, for all the work. I know it's a tremendous amount of busy work to track that all down. So thanks for getting us from 57 to 20. I mean, that's really important that we made that effort. And maybe we'll bring that even down to 10 by some miracle in this COVID wretched world of ours. So thanks so much.
Yeah, you're so welcome.
Thanks, and sorry to pull you out of whatever else you were doing at the moment.
Everyday life.
Just waiting for us to call, say, get back on that board meeting.
I was waiting for John's text, and I was like, okay.
Totally my fault. I owe you big time, Caroline. So on the membership report, still, there's a couple items in your board documents you can take a look at. Caroline put together really comprehensive views on our 2 membership drives we've had recently. Each had some interesting outcomes. The last one we did in February showed quite a bit of benefit to the organization. Now, that was also the same time people were joining to submit awards as well. So, but we were able to sort of figure out which, in what degree the drive helped. So that's something that we'd like the membership committee to continue to work on and think through, is when's the right time we might do further membership drives like that. And then in your document 11B, which is just an overall report, in case you haven't noticed, our current membership as of April 1st is 5,650 members. And that, as comparison to a year ago, is down a couple hundred. So now it could be worse than that. I mean, it could have been worse than that. So I think there's reason to say, okay, good, we can work with that. And we'll continue to work towards membership outcomes and growth. Our membership is a snapshot in time because we have a rolling anniversary dates. So it's hard to, we don't go to the end of the year and say, this is how many we have. We've got to have to snapshot at a time. So right now at this moment, we have roughly 5,650 members.
All right. Any questions for John on that, or Caroline, or our committee chair, Colin DeVries, who's with us? Lauren.
I know one of the things that we talked about in the past was having the membership committee work on developing an updated value proposition for why people should be joining SPJ. And I think there are a couple of things that are overlooked that we don't really talk about, that we are not coming anywhere close to maximizing the publicity for. One of them is all of the amazing work that the LDF committee does. And I think that if we get the word out there and talk more about that work, that would be helpful. I also think equally, if not more important, is the ethics hotline. And we don't really talk about it. I know people know about it because Lynn is extremely busy and all of her predecessors were as well. But especially ethics right now in the COVID world, I think if we talk about it and highlight it and talk about what we're doing to help, that would help. And so if it's at all possible for the membership committee to come back in June or submit in their report, recommended updated value proposition, essentially, if you, not that anybody's going to be with anybody in an elevator for a very long time, but if you were going to just be having a quick chat with someone and telling them why they should join SPJ, what would we say?
I agree with what Lauren says, and there's lots of good fodder in the committee reports that I believe you have access to. 35 letters and briefs from LDF. I mean, there's a lot of work that has been done, not behind the scenes, but to some people, they may think it's behind the scenes, so they don't know about it. So I think it's a great idea. It's long been said that journalists don't know how to publicize ourselves. This is not new, but there's a lot of good fodder in those reports, I think, that you can take a look at and see how you might come up with a way to share that information.
Well, to that point, we do a whole lot of a whole lot. I mean, again, look at those committee reports. We have very active committees. We have active communities. They're out there beating the drum on so many different fronts. We're doing some really great things. It's difficult to get that message to the person who doesn't know about us, who isn't, we're not on their radar screen. How do we break through the noise of all the other possibilities for their time and their dollars? That's a challenge. And one of the things we've been trying to do in thinking about our strategy and what is our plan is exactly what you're just mentioning, both of you. What is our value proposition? What is our central message? What is our role in the world of journalism advocacy groups, where you can say to your colleague, your friend, your neighbor, hey, you really should check us out. We're doing XYZ, right? It's because we're not doing just XYZ, we're doing A through Z. And so it's very sometimes difficult to communicate that. So, you know, we've had a couple of successful membership drives. Those are great, but being able to have a more succinct messaging and drive people to our site to check out all the things we're doing, you know, it's a big question, but, you know, everybody's right, but that doesn't get us new members is the conundrum. We do some fabulous things. We really do. And getting people to focus on those is difficult. LDF is but one example, I think. Let's let Colin, he raised his hand briefly. Let's let Colin have a say. He's the membership committee chair for people who don't know Colin DeVries.
Hello, hi Patty. Yeah, we actually talked about this at our last meeting last week because John had recommended that we actually identify as a committee our top tangible and intangible benefits of SPJ membership. And actually, while I was waiting through executive session, I was organizing some of those that we talked about. And yeah, LDF is up there, and the ethics hotline is also there, as well as a dozen other things. But I think that one of the things that we talked about is that each membership type have different needs. Students have different needs than professionals. Teachers, professors value different things in SPJ membership. So I think it's just how do we package that for these different audiences? And I think what we're gonna do as a committee is we're gonna amongst ourselves. I've grown the committee now to have representation from 10 of our 12 regions, and a mix of professions: students, academics, professionals, freelancers, and staff, and also people like me who are not a journalist but was one and grandfathered in. So I think it would be a good cross section to see how we all together collectively rank some of those benefits. And then I'll be able to present that, and then we could think about ways to, I guess, market that more.
Great. Sounds like a good approach, the broad-based committee. All right, super. Rebecca Aguilar. Unmute.
Our membership is still $70, $75, right?
75.
Have we ever thought of having a furlough, laid off, lost your job special? I mean, I'm just thinking $75 is $75. And for some of these people, I mean, even people who are not even part of our organization, you know, even to join us for $35 or $40, you know, we show them some hope. And yes, offer them all these committees and all the programs we have. And finally, someone is saying, gosh, you know, they thought of me when I lost my job. I got laid off and furloughed. You know, maybe a special for them. I'm not saying forever, but during this crisis.
We already have something like that, Rebecca. And I'm actually glad that you brought it up, because what we currently have is a waiver for 6 months. And I think it would be great if we could extend the waiver to 1 year.
And a waiver that they get in for free?
Yes.
Oh, well, then we need to really...
It's an extension of their membership. So if they are unable to renew, or if they're on, even if they're on auto dues, we allow it as well. So if they're unable to renew, or they recently lost their job, what I do is I take their membership expiration date and I push it out an additional 6 months to give them an opportunity for some time, so that we don't lose them, A, as a member, and B, so that they feel supported, and then C, giving them the time that they might need to be able to afford to renew when that 6 month extension comes up. And let's say in 6 months that they're not there yet. I think the 3 people now I've managed to work with and get them there by 7 or 8, 9 months. So I kind of handle that at a case-by-case situation right now, but we do have that, like Warren said, that broad 6 month waiver for anyone that needs it, and that was, you know, well before the pandemic.
What about new people? Like, let's say I'm not a member and you know, suddenly I want to come here, but I really can't afford $75. How does that work?
Well, the first thing I do is I offer our auto dues option for a professional. It comes down to just $6.67 a month to be on our auto dues. For students, it's even cheaper. So that's the first thing I do, and that usually is a really nice appeal to them. So if you can afford a little over $6 a month, then you can be considered an active full benefit member. You know, Linda and I do really well to make sure that we keep up with our auto dues members. But that's usually my first go-to. And I've not had anyone tell me that they want to be a member but can't afford the auto dues option. So I've not encountered that during this crisis anyway.
John, is there any way that, you know, we can really start promoting that again and really get it out there? Maybe, I'm not really sure, just to grab people's attention that, hey, if you want to join us, you know, we have a payment plan, $6 a month, even if it's a short video or something to, you know, that can go viral, that can really help, you know, just put it out front and center. I think that if I lost my job and I'm just looking for somewhere to give me hope, and I see a video that says, hey, you know, for $6 a month on a payment plan, you can join us and you have access to this, and this. I don't know. I'm just thinking about it.
I think we will definitely take a look at how do we make that more readily known and more apparent for people. I think that's a really smart thing to do.
One of the things
Also,
I would say is that right now we have a whole bunch of resources on our front page that are all themed under COVID-19, how we're helping members, what we're doing. But again, there's so much there. So, you know, the waiver is about, you know, it's down in the second half of the screen and it's one of 6 bullet points under, we're in this together. So we have this kind of robust reaction to COVID-19, but some things do get lost. And so kind of figuring out, I think, on the staff side of what to highlight every week, you know, the thing we're doing this week that we want to really bring attention to might be to, you know, just rotate those up on the page, give them extra tweet love, all that kind of stuff. Saw Yvette's hand and then Matt's hand.
And yeah, definitely more awareness of this is a great idea. I see people are chatting about getting, you know, making sure RCs are getting that information back to their communities and other key communities. One thing we might also consider is our day of giving back. As we are encouraging people to give back, we can mention, hey, you know, we have these opportunities for our members to join at $6.60 a month, and you know what you give today can go help toward can help toward whatever we're going to help it for. But we can try to build that message into that as well, just to let people know that this is out there.
Matt?
I love the idea, that Netflix model of $6.60, whatever it is a month, as long as if it's $6.66, we might have a marketing dilemma on our hands. But
that's why it's $6.67.
There you go. Well done. Well done. If this came up at the finance committee meeting last week, the idea of doubling the waiver period. And so, Lauren, if what you just proposed is a motion, I will second that if we need a vote. And
It absolutely is a motion, Matt. Yes.
Is it seconded?
All right, we have a motion on the floor from Lauren, seconded by Matt, to double the waiver period. So instead of allowing Caroline to make those decisions kind of case by case, just have a blanket policy that if somebody seeks a waiver, it would go for a year, or or let me get some clarification. Would they have to ask for a year as opposed to 6 months?
No,
No, we would
they
just
ask for it,
for a
it's
year.
for a full year.
Okay, any additional discussion, board members, on that concept? I would like to hear from Caroline on whether that creates some administrative challenges. We know it has financial repercussions. Does it create administrative challenges for you as the person who executes things?
No, it doesn't. Not at all.
Okay. Yvette?
I just have a question. I know we're going to talk about the budget later. If we do this, would we need to update that budget with what we think will be coming in?
I don't think it would change the budget landscape enough to warrant having to change what we're looking at right now.
All right, all those in favor of the motion on the floor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion carries, and we will double the waiver period. Does that conclude our membership report, John?
Yes, and Colin did mention, their membership committee submitted a report. It's in your materials, and they are down on the agenda in the committee section. But so I guess if there's more to be said, it can be said there as well.
Okay, we'll return to that. And just briefly, we have on number 12, asked John to put together a list of our current partnerships, just so folks have an idea of our affinity groups that we're working with or had worked with in the past.
Yes. And that's what I did. I put together that list. It's a spreadsheet that basically looks at who our current partners are and who our former partners have been. Staff for a time was really actively, before I got here, was aggressively seeking external partnerships like this or contract and client relationships. It's something that we will take a look at again to not only see as a revenue source for the organization, but if we can position ourselves as a convening organization and a supportive organization to other journalist causes, then I think that only serves us well into the future. But currently, I guess I'll just let the spreadsheet, in the interest of time, you take a look at that. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Right, so if you looked at our budget, you saw that that's a line that has declined a little bit over in the two comparable periods. And then the question becomes, is this a strategy that the board endorses to seek more revenue? Does the staff have the bandwidth to serve external clients in the ways we have in the past? And so I guess I would just entertain any questions about that at this moment if board members want to see that. Joel is asking in the chat box, that's in the, Joel, that is in the Dropbox number 12. So you should be able to see it if you go to spj.org and can see the full agenda and so forth. All these supporting documents are in the Dropbox. Yeah, thank you. Any comments? I think from my perspective would be that we have a lot on our plate right now, that we are asking our staff to do an awful lot and to pivot into this moment called COVID-19. And so certainly as the year goes on and we get to a place that's a little bit less chaotic, we'd like to hear again, I think, the strategy for seeking more external clients. But I would say, on your list of things to do, John, I wouldn't put it at number 1 or 2, just because, again, every other group is, I don't know. I don't know if other groups would be even amenable to an offer to come in and handle their conference next year, right? That's not going to really be a conversation that they're going to be interested in having at this moment. But, it was a strategy that Joe Skeel had adopted, and it had some promise and brought in some necessary dollars and gave us kind of some shelter from the storm, because it was, kind of a guaranteed revenue stream, but that seems to have declined a bit. And so, as you move ahead in your position, if you just revisit that from time to time. And
sure.
Yeah. All right. Going now to number 13. As many of you know, we have been talking for a number of months or more than a number of months, but about a year and a half, on strategic planning, put together a task force year 1 during Alex's term as president, continued that in the fall under Matt Hall. And so turn it over to Matt to give us a verbal update on what's happening with the strategic planning task force.
Yeah, thanks, Patty. I'll start at the end rather than the beginning. We haven't met since the stay-home orders went into effect. A lot of the task force members, including myself, have been working long hours on the day jobs, and then washing dishes at least 2 hours a day for those of us who have 4 or more people in the house. But we're going to get back together soon, partly because of the need for speed with what John has put together with his 3-month action plan and the proposal with the foundation for a 3-year plan. But just to bring everyone up to speed, so under Victor, for the last year, the group did a ton. And since EIJ in September, the task force hit the ground running and surveyed members, trying to figure out where we should focus our priorities and our efforts going forward. And through that process, we had 3 focus groups, which were fairly well attended. And even the ones that only had, I think, 8 or 10 people were among some of the best, because we went deep on issues and really drilled down to hear what people wanted. So we talked to students, we talked to recent grads, we talked to pros and retirees. And ultimately, we landed on 5 big themes that we wanted to focus on going forward. And those 5 themes are membership, with a focus on diversity and youth in particular. Education and training was the second one, with a focus on innovation and digital training. So already that dovetails nicely with current events and what our focus and plans are now. Advocacy, lobbying, ethics, and FOI is a third theme. Obviously, those are some of the pillars of SPJ historically and will remain so. And then the last 2 are diversity, a standalone, as well as thematically through all of these. And lastly, financial growth and stability, which obviously we need more of. And so then what we started to do with the addition of John and Taylor, when they were added to the committee, the task force, there's now 11 of us. And so we just started soldiering through once we locked down these 5 and got through the first 2, where we took a deeper pass and laid out some ways to improve these offerings. And then after we had done 2 of the 5 is when we got upended by current events. And so when we gather again, I think we'll probably go back and look at the first 2 to see what's changed in this new world order, and then how we proceed. But that's kind of the short version of a lot of heavy lifting that led us to where we are today. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Questions for Matt? So as has been alluded to a couple of times, and Matt just mentioned just now, the current focus in the near term is going to be on priority 2, which is education and training. We really feel like now is the moment to move forward aggressively in that priority. There are, of course, a large number of groups that are already out doing trainings and online resources. We have some, we can develop more, and that conversation is very live and very fresh. And as soon as we have more solid plans on that, we'll share it with membership. But we really feel like we're probably going to be in an online atmosphere environment for longer than just this month and next month. And so that is something that we should be doing aggressively, and that's the hope. And so we'll certainly share more with membership as soon as that is a little more flushed out. That's what we were talking with the foundation about today, and that's what we'll go back and talk to them about in 3 weeks' time. So seeing no questions from Matt, would thank him very much for leadership on that front, and move now to the next item, which is EIJ Sponsorship Task Force. Narissa Young, I think, is on this call, and we'll call on her in just a minute. Board members, you did get a memo from Narissa reminding you of the general bent of the earlier recommendation from that group. Narissa, if you're on, can we unmute you and just give us a 1 to 2 minute overview of the work, so that folks who are coming to this call for the first time understand what's been going on that.
Yes, thank you so much, Patty. I will be brief. Appreciate the opportunity to be with the board today. And I just want to give my kudos to the national headquarters staff for all the stuff they have been putting out on SPJ's website and in leads and so forth about COVID. It's been awesome. Appreciate Patty's response on some of the issues involving journalism too. 3 main points that you see. The proposal does not automatically exclude anyone. Second, the board retains full authority to select or reject anyone, and it encourages adherence to the pillars of SPJ's mission. In the time that lapsed from the February meeting to this one, we've had questions from members in pro chapters about this proposal, wanting to look at it. So as we have shared that, 13 pro chapters have come on board across the country to endorse this proposal, and I'm going to copy and paste those into the chat so everyone can get a look at it. Thank you.
Very good. So just to refresh, those of you on this call are probably very aware that we've had some dust-ups over sponsorships of EIJ over time. Thank you, Narissa, added the list to the chat field, and put together this task force to address that at the direction of last year's delegates. And the idea is that the recommendations that Narissa's task force have put together would then go to the delegates for EIJ 20. And so our board does not necessarily have to take a position or a vote, but I am open to that if we have a board member who would like to take a position or ask for a vote. Otherwise, questions for Narissa at this time? Matt, go ahead, please.
I would encourage a vote. I'd encourage a vote in support of this. I was the board liaison on the task force, and we came at it with a lot of different perspectives and a lot of different mindsets. And after some really good discussions, came to a place where we not only mostly agree, but we all agreed. This was a unanimous vote in the end, which is saying quite a bit. You know, maybe it doesn't affect this year, depending on what happens with EIJ, but we're going to be in business for years, one would expect and one would hope. And so I think this policy puts us in a strong position going forward. And as you can see from what Narissa just showed in the chat, it is supported by not only some of the bigger chapters around the country, but many of the chapters around the country. And so I would make a motion that we support the policy as drafted.
Just if I could, one thing of clarification, because the delegates would be voting for it at convention, it would not take effect if it's voted by delegates until 2021. So this does not touch what's going on with DC, does not throw another wrinkle into the wrinkles we already have.
Thank you. Good point.
Very good. And Narissa, did these large chapters organically come forward, or was this a follow-up initiative on the part of your task force to put it in front of them and ask for their position?
We had a person who was interested in seeing whether chapters would be interested in doing it, and that person contacted these folks and received the information that I shared.
Thank you. So we have a motion on the floor from Matt Hall to proceed as recommended by the task force. Do we have a second on that motion?
Okay.
Rebecca Aguilar is seconding the motion. All right. Any additional discussion? Lauren Bartlett.
I'm still very troubled by the proposal. When we last met, the concern I raised was that the task force went beyond the scope of the resolution, and their solution to that was to strongly recommend that chapters and regions follow it, but that they don't have to. So we could end up in a situation where national says no thank you to money, but then for a regional conference or a chapter event, we have them say yes. And so there's, you know, a conflict within SPJ. I've talked with several members, people I've known and trust for a long time. And I am just very troubled by this. We know that this came out of Fox, Sinclair, and the Koch Foundation. But we don't talk about the other news outlets like MSNBC or CNN, who have opinions that are on air on the other side of the aisle. And saying that we, banning a sponsorship from a news organization because somebody might have sued them legitimately, or they might have sued somebody legitimately. I struggle with it. It's also incredibly broad and vague. So on one hand, it does nothing and leaves everything to the board. But on the other hand, it does everything and ties our hands too much. And I'm very concerned, especially that we will be moving forward without any known partners. We know we will not be moving forward with RTDNA about how to fund any future national convention. I know that's not a popular opinion, but I needed to voice it.
Well, may I ask a question, Lauren? Since you wrote the resolution, what did you want the final version to look like?
I didn't have a particular view, but what I wanted the final version to do is tell the board how a national convention can be funded if you cut all of these funders out. And it doesn't do that.
I didn't see that language in the resolution. It didn't talk about a fiscal note. It mainly dealt with who are these people and is it appropriate for us to be aligned with them? That was our charge.
I think when we had discussion during the convention, I believe that was something that I had addressed. While I understand it was not in the language of the motion, but I think it is important for us to be able to, moving forward, when we can for sure, when we get past the pandemic and we can safely have in-person conventions, to be able to fund them. And I see this hindering that.
Please correct me if I misunderstood me, but on the one hand, you say it's too restrictive, and then on the other hand, you say it's too broad. Can you explain what you mean by that?
It could be interpreted either way.
I'd like to go to Matt Hall and then to Becky Talent.
Just to address two of, am I muted? No. To address two of Lauren's points. One is, the disconnect between national and the regions and local chapters. We already have that. I mean, Florida, just to use one example, has really pushed the unionization of newsrooms, which is a position that national has either been opposed to or silent on for years. So there already is a disconnect. So it doesn't really make sense that this creates more. In a sense, it kind of locks down a way for us to make decisions as a board. It has some ability for John as the ED also to look at this. So there is protections that way. So I'm not sure that argument holds. And to the point about CNN and MSNBC or Fox, I think the policy purposely doesn't tilt one way or another philosophically or politically. It's designed to apply equally to all sponsors or all potential sponsors. And it was modeled after ONA's policy in large part. And I don't think anyone on here who's following conventions can dispute the fact that ONA has the most successful one. They charge the most, they get the most, and they turn people away at their conventions. So sponsors clearly aren't troubled by the policy for them. And so I guess I would just say that, broadly, again, this is a smart policy that I urge us all to support.
Oh, there's one other thing I forgot to mention, if I could, Patty.
Yeah, go
and
ahead.
that's the fact that unlike ONA, we usually have partners. So, if we had this policy last year, the year before, or whatnot, where we've had one or two partners, we can't unilaterally decide anything. And to be financially viable moving forward, I know that we want to be looking for other partners, and this could severely hinder the ability to get new partners.
Becky Talent.
As a member of the task force, one of the things that we did is we pulled the resolution. We looked at the resolution. We had the resolution in front of us when we were working on this. Yes, we checked with ONA. We also checked with other journalism groups like NAJA and asked what they do and took their advice. So, Lauren, this is exactly what you asked us for. You know, I don't know what else to say. We followed what the resolution said and brought it back, and it's, you know, to be voted on by the delegates. So yeah, there's always concerns about a number of different things, but this is precisely what the resolution asks us to do.
The resolution is now pasted in the chat field if anybody needs to look at it. Do we have any further discussion? We have a motion on the floor from Matt, seconded by Rebecca, to move forward to accept. Did I get that right? Rebecca, you were the second on the resolution. Thank you. To move forward to take a vote. Taylor.
So if we move forward with the motion, what would happen if a partnership has a whole different policy? I mean, how would we move forward with that?
Well, I think we'd be back at square one, right? So this year we have RTD&A. The following year we don't have anyone at this date. And when we have somebody for 2021, we'll have to, of course, put whatever policy we have in place in front of that partner and let them know that this is what our delegates have voted for and what our board has endorsed. And if that's a sticking point toward moving forward with a partner, well, then this board, you know, could be discussing this yet again. So do you think that's a fair interpretation, Matt? Yeah, go ahead. Matt, and then Narissa again.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I would also say that this is all in the framing. You can easily look at this and say that you would want to partner with SPJ because they have a really strong policy that takes ethics and business seriously. And that's an organization that you would want to be affiliated with. So I think it's all in the framing and the marketing and the discussions of this. And so I honestly don't think this will be a problem. I think that this will make us stronger. And the reality is we don't have a partner going forward in 2021 or beyond. So this would be a discussion point, not a detraction.
And Andy Schatz reminds us, and it's a good thing to keep in mind, that we as the board are being asked to endorse a policy. It's not thumbs up, thumbs down, because the resolution as written last year calls for any recommendation from the task force to go back to the delegates next year. And so that's exactly what's going to happen, whether this board says yay or nay. So just to keep that in mind. Narissa?
I would just like to add, hey, Taylor, how you doing? Hope you had a good birthday. I would just like to add that the focus of this proposal is on SPJ's pillars. It is not on any one organization over any other. The focus is on us following what we say, what the generations before us have said are important about SPJ. So thank you for that.
All right, friends, can we bring this to a vote? Yeah, go ahead, Lauren.
And Narissa, for any of the committee members. So under this policy, the Koch Foundation sponsorship, would it have been acceptable?
The board makes the decision, and so the board would have, I hope, if we could rewind the clock, would have looked at this sponsorship task force proposal if it were in effect as a policy and said no, that some of the things, the Koch Foundation money may be okay in some sense, that organization they formed with some of their money maybe, but because of the things that the Koch Foundation have done, probably not. But that would be a decision made by the board, and the executive director, again, as another stopgap measure, has the opportunity before a contract is signed to say, hold up just a second, let's look at this again.
So that means if the board decided that it wanted to support that for the reasons that the previous board stated under this policy, they could.
Yes, I think it's going to make it a lot more difficult for board members to join with other organizations that are not in simpatico. I think it's going to be more difficult for board members to explain why they decided to go ahead and partner with that organization. The problems with RTDNA are not as a result of anything in this proposal. The problems with RTDNA, as I understood it from the discussion at the February meeting, is they keep running around behind our backs and negotiating their side deals and stabbing us in the back on things that we said we agreed to do as two organizations sponsoring one professional development conference. So I don't think that we're saying anybody's being run off by this. I think we're saying that we want to make sure all cards are on the table about who SPJ is and what's important to SPJ, and that we think that's important in those that we partner with in whatever capacity. Thank you, Lauren.
But the decision is, just to be clear, the decision is fully, the board would be fully empowered to make all decisions.
Yeah, that's what the board is doing now. We're just asking that people, the proposal is that those who are making those decisions be fully aware of the concerns and that they are keeping SPJ's pillars foremost in having those negotiations and discussions. I know we've had an outside headhunter who's been doing a lot of those contracts. You know, this proposal ideally should go to that person and be in front of that person, as that person or that agency is looking for partners to contract with, because there's no point bringing somebody in from that headhunter organization that's wholly inappropriate. That wastes everybody's time. But again, you know, if you want to bring the people from who say that, you know, Martians and the space people are real back to the Trade Mart, there's nothing here that says you can't do that.
All right, friends, let's see if we can do a vote on this now. We have a motion on the floor to endorse, right? It doesn't put it in place, but it endorses the task force report as it goes forward to the delegates this fall. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those
Aye.
opposed?
Nay, Riley.
Mike Riley? Any other nays? Any abstentions? All right, very good. Moving forward now, we're going to look at the budget now, friends. And I realize that it is 6 o'clock and we have not even gotten to the committee reports or the public comment. If there is an appetite to switch up the order, I would take that as a motion. For example, if folks need to get off this call and want to have the public comment first, I would be certainly open to that. Or we can just move forward and talk about the budget next. All right, sticking with us. In true SPJ spirit, we're just going to plow through this. Here we go. So we have a budget proposed for this year. We typically at this meeting look at and approve the budget for the coming fiscal year, but we are in the fiscal year, right? So this is a change that the fiscal year is now coincides with the calendar year. And so John and Jake Koenig, our controller, did a yeoman's job of putting together many different versions of this document, but all of them end up with a deficit number. And so that's one of the things we're talking about today. And with that, I think I'll just turn it over to John to give us an overview of where we stand and where we hope to go from here.
Thanks, Patty. In the interest of time, I'll point you to my budget memo, which is in the folders and the materials. Just real quickly for everyone's benefit, as Patty discussed, this is a 2020 calendar year budget. So we're already a few months into the 2020 year, obviously. So we are approving a budget to carry us out through the rest of the year that incorporates all 12 months of the year. In a few months, we'll come back at you with a 2021 budget. So what we decide today is going to be sort of the budget, the management tool we use through the course of the remainder of the year. And then we'll come back and take a look into the future. So it is a management tool. We're going to try to perform better than this budget on the revenue side and the expense side. We always do, or at least, I don't know if that's always been the case, but under my leadership on staff level, we always will attempt that. And we will try our best to make sure whatever deficit exists in a budget may not exist in real time or is less severe. So budget, you have two proposals. They're listed, I hope easy enough for you to follow into a budget A and a budget B. Budget A is sort of a business as usual budget in terms of we would host our events still as planned. Budget B would takes out the EIJ and SDX events. And you'll see that budget A shows a deficit of 129,000 roughly, and budget B shows a deficit of 188,000 roughly. So obviously, if we don't have EIJ or SDX, it's going to have an impact on our budget, and that's not taking into account that's expecting that we wouldn't pay any penalty fees for not having EIJ in any regard. So that's just basically what would hurt the bottom line. There's lots of things that contribute to where we are today: a decline in membership, maybe an overinflation in a previous budget cycle of what we would be able to achieve in as far as income, sponsorship, and fundraising support, as well as some changes to our events and such, and so on and so forth. I feel like I can pull more levers and have more of an influence on 2021 budget than I can on this one. This is sort of what's locked into place in a lot of regards, but still we need to have some discussion around where we stand and how do we try to perform better. Jake is here to answer questions that are specific, and so with that, maybe we turn to that.
I'd like to just add a couple things, and thank you, John. And again, thanks to you and Jake for really terrific work on this. When you look at the revenue side, we have 5 big drivers of revenue. It always used to be membership was number 1. Membership is not number 1 in this budget because we have moved over our Facebook and our Google contracts to the SPJ budget from the SPJ Foundation budget. So that's a nice big infusion of $448,000, which is welcome. But then, of course, on the expense side, there are some direct expenses related to our Google and our Facebook contracts, which take about 2/3, maybe even 75% of that $448,000 away. With, leaving us though with some nice management fees for managing those contracts. I also wanted to point out, sorry, lost my train of thought here. John, does the budget, the budget that shows 129,000 deficit, does that account for the new database management contract?
Yes, it does.
Okay, so that's built in there as well as the fee to remove ourselves from the last one?
Yes.
Okay, so those are baked in there. That's not an additional. So, obviously, as I actually used our budget, if you'll forgive me, in my one of my journalism classes to help students understand there's a story in the numbers, right? There's revenue and there's expenses, and you want the top one to be bigger than the smaller one or the other one. So, as we move into this year, as John said, he inherited this budget. He's had to make do with this budget, and then figure out how we move forward. The good news is he gets another crack at it in the fall when we come together, whether we're together in person or digitally for the next year's budget. And so we, obviously we as a board, we don't want a deficit position. And one of the reasons we went to the foundation today is to figure out how to bring in some new revenue, to do some new things that will help us on the revenue side. That will make people excited about engaging with us. That could have a positive effect as we move forward. So I'm talking too much. I'm going to leave now. Open it up to any members. Board members with questions. Matt Hall, please.
I just had a 30,000-foot question. I'm wondering what action you want from us today. It seems like we're kind of boxed in and can't really make a decision between these because we don't know whether to proceed with EIJ, which is a decision we won't make for weeks at a minimum. Can we have a discussion and not make a decision till June? Do you need a vote from us today? What are you hoping to get?
It's a good question. I think you could do a couple things. You could do that. You could hold off till June, and then we're halfway through the year of the budget we're approving, or you could approve both and treat them as contingency budgets. And one would go into place in scenario A, and one would go into place in scenario B.
And the only things that would change would be the convention income and expenses, and then the awards banquet income and expenses. So all of the other items would still remain the same.
Just to kick off discussion then, I guess if you'd entertain a motion just to start the discussion, I guess I like the contingency idea. I would make a motion that we approve both budgets contingent on the decision to be made about our major events.
I'll second it.
So that's Matt and Lauren with the second. So let's do additional discussion. This is typically a place in a board meeting where we say, Executive Director, do X, Y, and Z to increase revenue or decrease expenses. So do we have some ideas in that regard? Lauren Bartlett?
I'm not sure that there are ideas as much as questions. And first, I wanted to say to John and Jake, both of you, thank you. I think you're doing a great job with, as Patty put it, what you had. That being said, and I know that moving forward, it's going to get better with the two of you working on this. So I have a quick list of questions. Hopefully my questions it'll take longer for me to read them than it will be for you to answer them. At the Finance Committee meeting, Jake said that he recently accomplished billing for previous year association management changes that were not billed when they came due because the work was not being done under the old regime. Will payment of those delayed bills by SPJ's clients be increase the association management revenue projection line?
Yes, it will a little bit, because when we put together the budget, and just that this is an overall general comment too, when John and I, well, first of all, the entire staff helped put this budget together. So I'll just let you know that. So each person delved into their own particular area, such as Caroline in the membership and Matt in the awards area, and they analyzed everything associated with what they needed to perform their position. So that was like really the first step when this budget was put together. But then when it came to John and I looking at things, we both agreed that to approach things from a conservative standpoint and to try to make this budget the most realistic thing that we thought was actually going to happen. And as we talked about last year, there was some inflated or some very non-conservative estimates of how much money that we thought we'd bring in contributions, which, as we know, didn't happen. But so this is a nice conservative estimate, and we did the same thing when I was trying to estimate how much we would be billing these clients for previous work that we did. So it came out about $10,000 or so higher than what I had anticipated. So I'm anticipating that cash to come in with this more favorable budget to actual.
Okay. How can the lease management revenue go down? Did the rent decrease? Because we have the same tenants, right?
Right. Let me look at that real quick, because I did not notice that before. But we have the same tenant. They are I could not tell you why there's that difference, but basically what I did for the current year was taking what SPJ's share of the monthly revenue that comes in from the rent, because we split it with the foundation, and multiplied that by 12, and that's where we were. That's where we are now. So there was no planned decline. I just think the prior year was not maybe as accurate as it could have been.
Okay. Because we aren't having any in-person meetings this year, so there's no airfare, cab fare, meals, and all of that, shouldn't board expenses go down? And then also related to that, I would expect that the RC stipends wouldn't be used because there's no regional conferences or unless we have EIJ. So wouldn't those go down if EIJ doesn't happen?
Yeah, John and I did take some of the travel expenses for different things out, and meeting expenses, we took those out of the board related expenditures as well. So I'm saying if you compare those, the board related expenditures went down about $14,000 because of that.
There are some, obviously we would want some board direction on the RC, regional coordinator stipends, I think there was talk about, could those, do those go away, or do they stay in some format, as well as, board stipends could be discussed as well, but all those stayed consistent.
Okay.
I would say, however, the two budgets both have the same amount for board-related expenditures. So if you had looked at that, it's the same in both versions of the budget.
Right. And the same thing for the RCs. If there is no EIJ and there are no in-person regional conferences, I would recommend suspending the stipends for 1 year and bringing them back at the full rate the following year, just because of the current circumstances, to suspend them because of the budget and the fact that there's not essential travel.
Those are two good points, and that's why this is a management tool, and we try to perform better than this, and that's one of those areas where we likely would by the end of the year for sure.
And this one, I'm going to guess it's necessary, but wondering what the capital improvements are, and do they need to be done in the year? Can they be deferred because of budget issues?
The capital improvements have actually already been incurred. We had issues with the HVAC system.
Okay, got it. There's a 30% increase in health insurance premiums. Did we try to negotiate or do anything different? Because it's a pretty steep increase.
Part of that, you're looking at like summary data. Part of that increase was probably relating to change in personnel coming on board, and we're covering what we cover and what we don't. I believe in the healthcare area, we conservatively budgeted a 9% increase, because that's what we were told by our broker, that's what he's seeing out there in the real world. But our health insurance won't renew until July. So John and I kind of basically cut that in half and increased it by 4.5%. So, what we did is we took actual health insurance costs for medical, dental, vision, short and long-term disability, and increased by each person, and increased that by 4.5%. And that's what is in this figure. But there's more of an increase because we do have changes in personnel who are now being covered under the health insurance that were not a year ago.
Okay. I also noticed there was a big increase in dues and subscription expenses and employee training. Is that something, just kind of wondering where that came from, and is there anything in there that we could put a pause on?
Let me look at the kind of the details behind that.
That could be a function of applying to that category things that were in another category. We did a lot of that cleanup as well.
Yeah,
so that could be part of that too.
Yeah, because I'm seeing that we put, John, the meltwater fee in there as well. And then I know that you had budgeted, as an estimate, a certain amount of money for each staff member for education and training, which may not have been adequately budgeted the year before. But those are the only two figures that are in there.
Okay. And then just a couple more questions. In Plan B, is there a way to reduce merchant fees if we're not going to be processing EIJ payments?
Well, in this budget, there is no merchant fees for processing EIG payments because RTD&A is taking over that role.
Oh, got it. Okay.
And in the past, we have only shared or asked for reimbursement for those costs from partners other than RTD&A. So when I was discussing things with RTD&A this year regarding the convention budget, I said, now we have never charged you for us processing all these registrations. You're not going to process them. You're not going to charge us, right? And she said no. So, but what this is for membership, basically.
Okay. Thanks, Jake. And last question on B, if there's, and I think we might have covered this to a certain extent, if there is no travel, would the staff travel budget go down if there's no EIJ?
Yes, and because I know that, oh yes, definitely. So basically any expense associated with the convention, which includes staff travel, would go away. But I do know that there's staff travel in there that John put in the budget, which under management general, which would be for his travel. And so there is likely room in that. If he's not doing hardly any traveling, that expense will not be incurred.
Yeah.
Thank you for indulging my questions.
I have just a couple more, and perhaps other board members do as well. If Google and Facebook trainings move online, would we be saving money on the participant/speaker travel line, which I'm led to believe is attached to the Facebook and Google contracts?
Yes, we would.
Yes, we would.
Okay, so it's budgeted 123 right now, but if that changes significantly, that would be a big, reversal there. Okay.
Sure.
Right. So other questions? Mike Riley?
Very brief comments. To answer your earlier question, the Google trainings are online now up until it's safe to travel, and I don't think that'll be anytime soon. I'll abstain from vote on this budget because the Google budget has moved over from the foundation over here. So I'll abstain from voting. As far as cuts, let's look at travel, food at events. There's a million little things that add up very quickly that we can look at, not just this year, but moving ahead. But the point I want to make is development. And I shared this with John and Patty earlier this week. Last week, Google's Journalism Relief Fund gave $1 million total to ICFJ and the Dart Center. And it's opening it up to local newsrooms and other orgs. So there's money there. We need to get in on that. Twitter last month, CPJ and IWMF, the International Women's Media Foundation, each got $1 million. And some of this money can be used not just for coronavirus efforts, but also for operational costs. We need to get in those games, and this goes to the foundation, this goes to the SPJ board, this goes to staff, this goes to the executive director, everybody on here. It's kind of stuff we need to start going after. We could have not had a deficit budget this year, or a very small one, had that money come through last year that we were promised and never materialized. But look at all these opportunities that we've missed. Let's look there. Go where the money is. I mean, I think talking to Newmark's a great thing. Pointer got there first, but there's other places we can go. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mike. All right, so couple ways we can go here. We can, as discussed, have a motion to approve the budget and the contingency budget should we not be able to go forward with SDX dinner and EIJ as earlier planned. We could kick it down the road and not do anything till June, when we'll have a clearer picture on some of our realities, and John and Jake could put together a cleaner document. I'm sorry, did we have a motion on the floor before or not? Yeah, I'm sorry, Matt, we did already. I need you to repeat that. Thank you.
Well, actually, I'm going to maybe change my motion, because my motion at first was to approve them both with a contingency that we adopt B if we cancel our events. But it does sound like there might be some, I mean, obviously it's a deficit budget, every dollar counts. And so there might be some room, as Lauren ferreted out, to save even more money on travel and expenses. And frankly, if we're going to cancel EIJ and no one's traveling anyway, then it doesn't seem like, as a symbol of solidarity, we could cut our own expenses right there, just not take a stipend. And so that's some money. The RCs probably don't need their money if there have been no regional conferences. And so that's tens of thousands of dollars when our deficit is hundreds of thousands. And as I said, every little bit helps. And so I guess I would propose that we revisit this in June after the decision is made, and that they go through with a scalpel and take out the travel and the meals and the speaker and consulting fees and the expenses that we won't need if we don't travel through until at least, the later part of the year.
Okay. So we then ask, we send this back to our headquarters and we ask for a revision to come to us in June. Under Matt's proposals, we have a second for that proposal.
I was the second of the original motion, so I'm happy to second this.
Okay. Matt, do we have any additional conversation about this motion in particular? Yvette?
Yeah, I just, I agree with what Matt's saying, particularly about our own expenses. As far as I can tell, the really only travel that we might have to do is fresh for education stuff, and we're not doing that right now because that's going online. So I just wanted to make sure that there's no other travel that we're not thinking about that maybe we would have to do. I can't think of any, but is there anything that I'm not thinking of?
Unless miraculously we have SDX dinner in June. We're not going to DC in June. And of course, EIJ is hanging in the balance. So I know I canceled everything I had in March, which was several trips. So, all right. Other questions, input? John has some input. Thank you.
I'm fine, obviously, with that motion, and we'll do it, whatever the board requests. I would just, one side of it is to say, let's move forward on supplying staff energy and time to cost-cutting measures and preparing for the next round of budgeting. We do, Jake's put in hours upon hours of work on this budget, and we're going to perform better than this budget, given for many of the reasons you've shared. And we can continue to make decisions that impact our bottom line and how we perform to the budget. But, at this point, it could almost become an exercise on paper that's just taking time to do. So I would just say, I'm okay if we come back into the June. I'm also excited to move on as well, to be honest with you, to the next era. So.
Yeah.
Right, good point.
If I could add something there, could I add something there as well? I think I'm going to, no matter what decision is made today, I'm going to have to be entering in a budget into our accounting system so that I can start giving John reports so that he can actually start making decisions and see what's happening with budget versus actual. And, that's the only way he's going to run this ship, from an accounting standpoint anyway. So whatever happens, I still think that the accounting staff is going to enter in a budget into our system to give John information to go on.
So one perspective here, guys, is if we go forward and we approve the budget, either A or B, or A or B, assuming things start to, assuming we go forward and the changes we just talked about happen, we're going to have a much better document. It's going to look so much better by comparison to what we're looking at right now. So that's one way to look at it. But the other way to look at it is we put a budget out to membership that has a big red line at the bottom, a big negative. Is that what we want to put out to membership? Maybe we do, because that's where we are right now, best guess. Things are not great financially right now, and that's maybe the most honest approach that we can put out to membership. So I just got a couple different ways to go here. I am very sympathetic to John's viewpoint that sending him and Jake back to rearrange the numbers, to make the adjustments is, X number of additional hours that forestalls their work on other important priorities. So trade-offs, right, Matt?
I would just suggest that, there really has to be no work done on the budget until we make a decision on EIJ. And then you just, if it doesn't proceed, then you go in with a scalpel. If not, then we have the budget. So I guess it's kind of 6 to 1, half dozen of the other, whether you plug it in, whether we vote now. The reality is EIJ is such a huge part of our budget that if we approve it now without that being, and then ultimately it isn't in there, then, then our motion here today is fruitless, really. It just seems to me that all your work is super appreciated. It helps us figure out what this looks like, even if we have to make a difficult decision to cancel this conference, so I guess I can see it either way. I still think that I would prefer us not to greenlight a budget with such a huge question mark in it, but I also don't understand what you're saying, and I don't expect you to go in on Monday and start figuring this out. Once we make a decision on SDX and EIJ, that's when the budget should be revisited, and that's when we'll all have a document that really means something, right? I mean, that's what I think, I guess.
True, but that's about the time that they're going to start working on the next year budget, so they have it for September. So
Right.
that's the calculation.
Question?
Yes.
So this question is for John and Jake. How important is it for you to have a budget prior to the decision being made about whether EIJ goes forward?
Well, I mean, we've already gone into the budget and removed, budget 2 or whatever you want to call it. We've already removed the convention aspect from that.
I guess what I'm asking is, would it be easier for you for us to approve something today, or would it be easier for you if we waited and don't approve something until that decision is made?
Okay, what's the least amount of work for you?
I don't think it would be any extra work, because the way the budgets are set up, there's like a specific area for the convention. So I could go in there and drop in things for the convention, and, it'd take me, 5 or 10 minutes to remove it if that decision was made to remove it. If that makes sense. I'm talking about the direct expenses and income of the convention. It'd be very easy to remove those.
So what's the least amount of work for you all at staff? Is it if we make a contingency motion today, or if we don't do nothing?
I think it's to make the motion today and to pass the budgets in a contingency format today, and then we, that part of the reason you have a finance committee is to continue to look into these numbers throughout the course of the year. But it's as Patty mentioned, I'm going to have to start tasking Jake and team to start putting budgets together for 2021 in about a month's time or so. So to have two things juggling in the air when June's going to be almost all the way halfway through 2020 as it is. So I understand that there are things in here we could do to get that deficit down in the budget, but those things will also be done to get it down at budget to actual as well, right? So in the end of the year report.
Yeah. Well, then in the interest of time today and of your time, if Lauren will change her motion back to my original, that's
Yes.
what I would suggest.
And then I will change my second back to the original.
All right, let's restate the motion for the record, please.
We approve both motions contingency, the second one contingent on the decision with our 2 events.
And Lauren is seconding. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any nays? All right, we have abstention, Mike Riley, thank you. We now have an approved budget A and budget B backup and moving forward. Obviously, we can continue to talk about this. We can ask you these questions in June. You can give us, updates, but you don't have to, hold the budget in abeyance while you wait for the board approval. All right, next we have a series of reports from our committee chairs about
the audit line item under budget.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Under finance.
Yeah, do we need to talk about that, John?
Yeah, just to make reference to it, and that it's in your materials, and the finance committee received a report from our auditors about our audit. It was a clean audit, and the finance committee was able to ask questions of the auditors. And so what you're seeing there is an audit for the 2018-19 fiscal year. So Jake, anything more to add? I think it's a pretty straightforward.
Yeah, no, it's straightforward, but I will add, since we changed our year end from fiscal year to calendar year, what will happen is that we'll do a tax return for the 6 months ending December 31st, 2019. And that is where we actually notify the IRS that we're changing our year end. And then at the auditor's suggestion, we will have an 18-month audit when we complete the year for 12/31/2020. So the 6 months that just ended through December 31st, 2019 will be audited, but they will not be audited until we actually complete our 2020 calendar year end.
Got it. Thank you. And Lauren has her hand up.
Yeah, I have one quick but very important process point, which is in the past, the audits were shared with the auditor. The auditor shared them with our executive committee. We no longer have an executive committee, and the policy committee task force that I was on that Matt shared, everything that previously said executive committee on it switched to board of directors. So I believe that report should have been made to the board in executive session, not to the finance committee. So I'm requesting in the future that it is made to the board in executive session, but also shared with the finance committee, but it goes to the board first.
Good point. Thank you for the clarification on that. This is one of those matters that as we downsize the board, we probably just did not pay close enough attention to. So thanks for the correction on that. That being the case, however, the audit was reviewed, the audit report was reviewed by the Finance Committee and accepted by the Finance Committee. So, but thank you for that. Okay, now are we ready to move to committee reports? We have asked people to join us, and so it would be nice to give them a couple of minutes to be able to speak to their reports. And first, Sue Kopen-Kachev, are you still with us?
I am still with you, although I have a very restless pup in my lap. I apologize.
Don't we all?
You have my report. One of the most amazing things is to come out of the pandemic is the creation very quickly of a contest geared to all of those incredible college journalists out there who are doing a phenomenal job. Michael Koretsky had the idea, we moved quickly with it. And the first week brought in, and they were allowed to submit articles for like I think it was like a three-week period. We changed it to weekly after that. We got a sum total of 258 entries from 125 different programs. By the way, we will be checking that out from those programs to see who is currently affiliated with SPJ and those that are not currently, and hopefully we can try to convince them to become a part of it. The judging of the work has it just really impresses. Even what would normally be routine, in some ways, given the circumstances, is just amazing. Andy and I judged the first 2 weeks. Andy's continuing to judge. It's impressive. It really is. I think there's going to be some diminution in the number of entries, but that only stands to reason. Instead of 200 and some, if we can get it to around 75 a week, I think that's very reasonable. What the students get out of it is a push out on social media with our partner organizations. And the winning reporters also are getting a year's free student membership. So it pays off on so many levels for in so many ways. In short, the SDX awards were up slightly, which is, I think, amazing given the condition of our industry. The Mark of Excellence entries started strong, then they dropped off a little bit, but that's kind of hit and miss. The MOE winner, our Best of Show winner, we have, I think I may have mentioned this before, but I just want to drive it home, even though we don't know what this situation will be with the Sigma Delta Chi dinner. The MOE winner will be presented at the Sigma Delta Chi dinner. We want to raise the profile of our Mark of Excellence contest. It gives our student winners a chance to really mix and mingle with some of the best professionals in the field. I just think it's, again, a win-win. We got the foundation board this morning to approve a recommendation that I had that has to do with a scholarship from an endowment, and we will be applying the proceeds from that scholarship, which is, well, hopefully will be available soon, to help defray the costs for the Mark of Excellence winner to attend that event. And we're actually going to try and see, and I've talked with John about this, to see if we can get some additional funding. On the whole, we've already also talked about the bigger picture of the historic sites, thanks to Mike Riley with his incredible creativity, and Billy and Andy Schatz, and heaven help us, but we're going to try it again with the fellows this summer. We want to make it something on the website that people actually want to look at. It is incredibly boring just to look at a column of information that says nothing. So we're making it interactive. We're making it exciting. We think certainly a vast improvement. So we've got that project sort of facing us very quickly down the road here. On the whole, I think it's been an extremely productive, and I'm very proud to say, really good season. And I see Matt Kent there, and thanks to Matt for all his hard work back in headquarters. we could not get it done. So there you go.
Thanks very much. I was a judge for the first week of the college competition. It was very exciting to read. It was exhausting, but it was very exciting to see the amount of great student work behind this, and hats off to everybody involved in that. And, you know, this is one of our trademarks. We do contests and we do them well, right? And we celebrate journalism, which is a big part of it. And yeah, so thank you for that great report, and keep on keeping on all the great things that that committee is doing. Ethics Committee, do we have anybody from Ethics Committee on the line? I know we have a report in the queue. Anybody on Ethics Committee?
Andy and I are both on the committee, but I think just go with the report unless anybody has any questions.
Okay. I think we're not gonna, yeah, go ahead, Taylor.
I read the report and I saw, I think probably Lynn wrote it, the section about the hotline. She brought up that we should be doing more to let members know we have that ethics hotline, and I personally didn't know we had it. I wasn't looking for it, but I thought it was a valuable thing, and I just wanted to know if we should have a quick discussion on whether there's something we can do to promote it.
Right, so it falls in the category of all the great things we do that get buried under all the other great things we do. So, you know, maybe, John, this is a communications conversation to have, kind of like rotating spotlight of great SPJ things, and we figure out a way to bring attention to certain projects as we go along.
Sure.
Yeah, you know, yes, Andy says the ethics line does get a lot from people who know it, but, you know, the world is churning. We have people coming in and out who don't know we have an ethics hotline and you know, don't know to avail themselves of it. So, yeah, this idea of continually try to put the spotlight on all the things we do has always been a problem, but I think we can think about that, how we can elevate certain things at certain moments.
Sure.
Yeah, okay. FOI, do we have FOI on the line? That would be Paul Fletcher is the chair. That committee has been very active as well. Mentioned earlier that that Catherine Foxhall, who is part of that team, got some attention for her continual attention to the PIO issue. But aside from that, the committee has been active in putting out statements and otherwise, you know, getting involved in things. It has an annual Black Hole Award that's on our site, et cetera, et cetera. So they continue to be active. Journalism education, Becky Talent had to leave the line. She took back over well, I'm sorry, is she the chair of journalism education right now? Am I misspeaking?
Actually, Letitia Steffens is now.
Thank you. And if you want to speak for the committee, that'd be great, Yvette.
Sure, yeah, I can. And the report certainly is in your packet. Probably the biggest thing is that the Press for Education program, where journalists go to schools, obviously that had to be suspended because, you know, shelter in place. But and I'm not sure who had the great idea, but someone had the great idea to basically have some videos available for teachers to show their students either through homeschool or online training or, you know, whatever is happening. And in fact, I think we had some videos available, but most recently they asked to interview some reporters and editors and people in journalism to see how they're coping with COVID and covering COVID. And so that was, I think those are the newest videos that are going out and the ones that she was referencing. I did a couple. So I think that that's probably the biggest thing that the Education Committee has been doing now, just reacting to, and not just reacting, it was proactive to think of this idea to get these resources to teachers and to parents who are homeschooling their kids.
Well, that's a great example of being able to turn on a dime. And as we think about bringing more online digital sources and resources to our members, you know, calling all of you on that committee into service, maybe even repurposing what you've already produced and making it available to a wider audience, depending on whether that seems like a good idea. But thank you for the quick action on that. Legal Defense Fund, somebody already gave them a strong plug. Do we have somebody from LDF on the line?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes. Hi,
Let's
Higgy.
start the video. Hi, everyone. So yeah, it's been a busy half year with 34 cases, 36 actually, 36 since convention. And actually there have been one or two that have come in since I wrote the report because of how active a year it's been. I know there can be a lot of disagreement, but the one wonderful thing about LDF is that I think it unites us as far as we are happy to fight for things that we all believe in. I'll just take like 1 minute to point out two things that we'll all be happy. This is why we're in the fight for. One of them is a West Virginia freelancer who went to just a typical, wanted to get records, and they wanted to charge him $1 a page. And he said, all right, I'll just take photos, with my phone. And they said, no. And then the judge said, you have to allow him. And they said, okay, you can take photos, but you still have to pay $1 a page. And, no, you don't. And so it's great to be able to support someone like that. And then another one that came up was we gave $4,000 to a reporter and another freelancer. A lot of our money's going to freelancers in the Orlando area. And it's a whole case where he knows there's a lot of sexual abuse taking place in a school district, a lot of cases that have been covered up, and I won't go into details. You can look on the 12-4 if you want. That case was settled. But the bottom line is, again, it's things that all reporters should be allowed to do, and we shouldn't have to fight for, but we have to fight. And so it's great to have the LDF there to do that fighting. Thank you for all your support, guys.
Excellent. Thank you. Yeah, we're doing great work in that category, and you've led it for a long time, Hagit, and thank you for all your work on that. So that's another thing we can trumpet to tell our members, what are we doing? We're going to court for you. We're signing letters that help keep, that protect journalism. Membership committee, we have already spent some time on that, but happy to come back to you, Colin, if you're still on the line, and add anything else about current activities on the membership front.
Hey, sure, thanks. So you have my report, and I'm not going to go through each bullet per se, but I do want to sort of spark a conversation with you all. Part of our, well, let me just preface the summary of my report, which notes that combined the summer 2019 and February 2020 drives have led to 627 new or lapsed members who have rejoined SPJ, which is about more than 10% of our organization. And it's hard to know the cause or effect really of whether it was just the timing was good for people to join, or if it actually was our drive that made that number what it is. But I think that's reassuring that drives do seem to be effective in getting people to join. So in that context, John has presented to our committee, and Caroline has also spoken to this too, about whether we want to continue to do drives, whether it's creating this habit for people to wait to sign up for membership during the drive. I don't know if any of you guys listen to public radio, or watch PBS, but I don't know if any of you wait to sign up for public radio or membership in public television for when they do their drives that take over. I'd like to know if there's information on whether that happens or not. But I don't know if the board's appetite for drives is strong or not, really. I just want to hear from you. We're looking to doing a student-only drive in the fall. That was on the table for us to work on, but I want to hear from you all about drives, if you don't mind.
Do we have comments to react to? Lauren Bartlett has her hand up.
I do. I know that John has weighed in on this, and I tend to agree with the traditional thought that frequent membership drives are not a good thing, and that we should be looking at other creative ways to expand membership and retain membership. I would really like to see the membership committee work with the regional coordinators and chapter leaders, because I think one-on-one individual connection is also, is in fact perhaps a better way. And I don't know if anybody at HQ has access to this. I remember it might be 2 years ago now, a former membership chair, Robin Sekula, had put together a great list of ideas for the membership committee. And I just think that things that happened with her and the committee wasn't able to move forward with that. So if somebody could dig that out and the new committee could take a look at it. I don't remember the specifics, Colin, but I just remember reading it and thinking how good it was. So that might be a resource for you as well.
Thank you. Yeah, I served on the committee with Robin as well when she was chair, and we've created similar lists on our committee, and I think they've been shared in previous reports. But I can reshare some of those ideas.
I'm excited, Colin, about a student campaign. I think that's a good idea. Hopefully we are back on campuses in the fall and we can hit the ground on that. Do hope that we'll use our CCC, our COVID-19 coverage campaign, as a way to reach back to those students who entered that competition. Hey, you engaged with SPJ. As well as Mark of Excellence. I know at my university, we have a lot of entries from students who don't sign up. And I don't know what we do at this point in terms of follow-up with those students, but those are students who know our name and, you know, and now the CCC crowd knows our name. And so they seem like a good population to target. Other comments or input on membership fronts? I see Sue's hand and then I see Matt's.
Yeah, I just want to, my concern with the students, and I'm all for that, is be careful to diminish the value of the 4 years for $100, which brings the rate down to $25. It can discourage students from committing, particularly in their freshman and sophomore year, because they really do save money at that point. Not so much, I'm sorry, she was getting antsy. Not so much junior and senior year, but it has been helpful. I know that my students at Maryland have used that frequently when we've recruited them at the freshman and sophomore level. So please keep that in mind. You don't want to diminish that for the sake of going the other way.
And sorry, next was Matt. Thank you.
Colin, thanks so much for your work, man. I really appreciate it. I know it's been tough with membership taking a dive, and your efforts have helped stabilize that to the extent they've stabilized. So I really appreciate that. And I love the focus on students. I just want to say that now more than ever, because students aren't on campus, they're not able to gather and even put out newspapers like they used to just a month ago. So anything we can do to help them, to get them stoked about journalism, to get them to join SPJ is greatly appreciated. So I think your heart and your head are in the right place to really focus in on students right now.
And Yvette.
This is, Colin, this is really not membership, but maybe it's more programming, but the fact that they aren't together, you know, definitely probably means they're not thinking about it. But Oklahoma's chapter actually did, they had planned to have a session with a great speaker. And so they ended up doing a Zoom session. We got a decent amount of people to come by. They all could see each other. So again, this is a membership, but I mean, any resources or suggestions we can get out to schools, say, hey, you know, you guys aren't together, but you can still, you know, you can still hold your meetings and things like that. And I'm not sure where that should come from. Maybe membership's not appropriate, but it was fun to go ahead and, sorry, my dog too. Everybody wants, they want to eat now. I think that's what the problem is. They want to have their dinner. I think just something that we can do to get them together under the SPJ auspices as a chapter is helpful, and it gets them thinking about it. So I'm not quite sure where that message comes from, but our group did it. I'm glad they did it. It was a nice evening.
All right, super. Thank you very much, Colin. Let's try to plow through the next few folks. We had a report already from the regional coordinators that Lauren gave us an overview on. Do we need to say anything else? I'm sorry, Colin, did you have something else you need to say?
Just one other thing, like I wanted to just share that I'm really reassured by all of the membership support going on around the country. Local chapters stepping up to give grants away to their members, or even non-members, non-member journalists in their geographic areas. Chicago is probably one of the most impressive programs, with $50,000 going toward hardship reimbursement grants, which is just incredible. I was just going to paste some links to funds in the chat now for you. And I look forward to seeing what SPJ is doing. I know that there's been a lot of discussion about that already. The Day of Giving Back, I think, is a great initiative. But I also would like to see more personally from a national level.
Right, that is rolling out at the end of the month, and I would encourage everybody on this call to support that to the extent that you can, and let others know that that's a way we can, members can help members. So thanks very much for all those links, that's helpful. And then going back to Lauren, do we have more to say on the RCs? We're in good shape?
I don't believe Jane is here, and unless there's any RC who is here who has anything to say, I think it was covered in her memo and what we previously discussed.
Joe Radsky, you're on the call. Would you like to add anything?
Or Jennifer or Michael?
Or Jennifer was on the call. Michael was on the call. I can't see the second screen, and so I'm losing some names here. Michael Koretsky, Jennifer still on the call. Just want to thank all of you for continuing your work for SPJ in big ways and small. This is, the SPJ structure remains intact, even though you guys are not on the board anymore. You're incredibly important to our continued growth and health and success. So thank you for all that. Let's see, we have two more reports from committees. One is from Rebecca Aguilar, Diversity Committee, and then we'll finish with Nominations Committee.
I want to apologize in advance just in case you hear my 4 dogs, because I heard someone's dog out there and they're hungry too. Anyway, so the SPJ Diversity Fellowship application was launched in March, but we're kind of in limbo right now, because if the conference doesn't happen, then the fellows, we're not sure if we should choose fellows or not, because if we choose some for 2020, they'll be cut short. The conference is where they have, breakfast with the fellows, they get to meet people in person, that kind of thing. So that's a conversation that Patty and Erwin and I will definitely have. The application is out there. We haven't really pushed it hard because, again, we are in limbo because of the decision the board has to make concerning the EIJ conference. And, the committee and even the fellows from 2019, committed to push this diversity fellowship, this leadership program forward. As the fellows from 2019 are on board to help promote it. We shot videos last year to use them for 2020 to get people in and really attract them to apply. Now we're gonna have to reshoot if we change it to 2021, again, a discussion that I'll definitely have with Erwin and Patty. In the meantime, one of the things is we have to locate former diversity fellowships. I don't even know when we started this fellowship. I hope maybe someone at headquarters can tell me. Maybe someone has a list. I know I was one in 2010. But it's a great time to find those people, see where they're at. Did they leave the business? How did they benefit from it? I think we can use this time, especially my committee, to really explore that, either bring them back or find out what did they get out of it that we can use as a promotional tool in the future. Whether they went into, I don't know, maybe they left the business totally, but they got something out of this diversity program. I think the past fellows are important. I think our 2019 fellows are important. But again, when it concerns the leadership program for 2020, it's in limbo. So that's it. Thank you. Any questions, comments, concerns?
It would be great to figure out some way to continue your efforts, even if we don't have EIJ in person. So we'll have to talk about that. And thank you for all your work on the committee.
Thank you.
Yeah. So the final report from committees is our nominations committee. This is always the time of year where we start talking about who will run for positions for next year. And you see a report from Alex Tarquinio is in the Dropbox as articulated. So there's not much there, meaning we don't have a robust slate of candidates this early. And so this is typically the time of year where we start to really wrap our brains around who we could reach out to. And I really do think it is the obligation of every board member to be thinking about that, to reach out to your colleagues in your markets and ask them if they have an interest in a board position, a regional coordinator position, or otherwise a leadership role in SPJ, right? That's part of our job, is building the leaders who come behind us. So be mindful of that, take a look at that, and do what you can to add names to that. You can bring them to my attention or directly to Alex. That would be fine. All right, the time has come for anybody still on this call who's been waiting to say something. Public comment at 2 minutes to 7. Have we sent them all away? All the pet chatters like, I'm getting out of here. I don't want to talk to you weird people. I could bring in the Bassets. It could be ugly. If you would like to make a comment, ask a question, you can just unmute yourself and do that. McCloskey says cocktail hour. Hi, who's speaking?
This is David from Los Angeles. Sorry, I'm doing a terrible job with my screen. Can you see me and hear me?
We can see you. Hi, David.
Hi.
We can
Hi.
see.
How are you all?
We're doing fine.
Great.
I just wanted to say a couple things. You know, I appreciate the information you guys are sending out, but I did want to kind of give you a taste of what it's like to be in the midst of this crisis right now, which is, you know, over the last couple weeks, you know, we had the weekly newspaper devoted to downtown shut down. That we had in LA County, there's a weekly devoted to the beach communities where they laid off everybody. There were 3 community newspapers shut this week. The Alden chain had like 5 or 6 layoffs plus 50 furloughs. I work for the LA Times. Our business side had 40 furloughs that could last till August, and there's more furloughs. I would not be surprised if we had more very soon. I just wanted to let you guys know that, because I don't know if you, in the middle of all this, I know you guys track this stuff and you care about it deeply, but I just wanted you to hear that, because it's a hard time out there, and I wanted you to know, despite the horrific glare on my screen, what's going on here in Southern California.
Thank you. That is valuable for us to know. We are reading it, but seeing it and hearing it from somebody who's in a market that's so affected is good reminder of what we're up against, and make us mindful of our potential to help.
And so if there's anything you guys are doing, like I look, you know, at the newsletter and the advisories, but if there's anything else you want to share with us about ways, like if you're trying to get your voices out about like stimulus money or whatever, and you need more voices added, please don't hesitate to reach out to us so we can add to your voices when you're trying to help.
Thank you. Are you active in the LA chapter?
I'm president.
Oh, I'm sorry. Bad on me.
That's okay.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, David. Others? Anybody else want to add their voice to today? It's great to see people. It's great to see your faces. Great to have so many staff members on the call. I just want to end then, if we're ending, is I want to really give a giant shout out to the staff. John joined us December 1. This is not the onboarding he expected. He thought it might be a little easier, a little slower. That was the ramp. But fortunately, he's a really quick study, so he's learned the organization quickly. And so we appreciate all he's doing to keep us moving, even in lockdown mode where staff is working remotely. We appreciate all the efforts of staff being very nimble to react to the moment. I think our front page looks really good. I think we look competitive versus other groups. Can we do more? Sure, we can, we will, but we're doing pretty good. We're serving members with what we have, and we're being smart about our resources and positioning ourselves well. So lots of work ahead to get our budget in shape, to make some very big decisions about two of our very big key events, and to figure out maybe new ways to serve our members through this this unusual moment in time.
Patty, can I jump in real quick?
Sure, Rebecca.
Is there something, because Colin, you know, he always has some great ideas. Is there something we can do? Look, there's a lot of college kids, they're not going to have a graduation, right? They're not going to have a ceremony. Is there something that we can do to collect photos of our member students that are graduating and maybe create a video saying congratulations with maybe some music? And it's all their photos, you know, of, you know, this person's graduating from, you know, I don't know, this school or that school. Again, it's supporting our students, the ones that are graduating. It could be a quick little video, just photo with a little music, and, you know, that kind of thing. I mean,
that'd be great. That'd be great. I love that idea a lot. All of us who teach are thinking the same thing, like, how do we celebrate our students? Yep.
I just thought they need it. I mean, they really do.
That's an awesome idea.
It is something that we can totally, I mean, it's easy to put together. I mean, if you have, you know, not Final Cut, but iMovie, boom, 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 photos of the little music. We can put our logo in the beginning. We can have their name and their school. And then at the end, our logo again, you know, join us, you know, congratulations to the class of 2020. And we can use it on all our social media. It's not dated. We can, you know, I mean, just use it over and over. And I think while we don't have a graduation, you know, we promote them. And again, Colin can use it when he's, you know, recruiting, you know, student members. And I mean, there's so much we can do with it. It could be such an easy turn like that. So just something out there.
Thank you. Great idea. We'll see if we can make that happen. Colin?
Hey, so I love that idea. And I think the next step would be to just engage the student chapters, right? To the journalism students to take pictures, send us the pictures, and we can elevate that. I just wanted to also, I don't know if this came up already. I know that it's been a long day of meetings for you guys. But did the foundation board act on the appeal that SPJ had made? Is that
right?
That be shared?
Right. We talked about that at the top of the meeting. So, or at some point, we did a presentation to them that John put together. We talked it through. We got, I think, decent response from the foundation board, but they asked us to come back on May 9th. We're going to have a return meeting. They would like more detail about what actually we have in mind and more dollars, you know, more line items on the budget. So, but the focus again for folks is to deliver online programming to members is the main thing that we're aiming for. All right.
Okay, thanks. Sorry, I missed that.
Yeah. Do I have a motion to adjourn this meeting?
So moved.
Mike Riley, seconded by Lauren, third by Newberry. All right. Thank you very much. We appreciate everybody being here.
We need to vote, Patty.
Oh, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No abstentions. The motion carries. And with that, we adjourn the meeting at 7:03 with thanks to everybody for being here. Appreciate your attention and your involvement and your many efforts for the organization.
Thanks, y'all.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Be safe.
Bye.
Happy
Bye,
Saturday.
thank you.
Bye-bye.